President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron in Paris to discuss a US-authored peace deal. Responding to opposition from Belgium's Prime Minister, EU High Representative Kaja Kallas said a reparations loan for Ukraine would not derail the peace process.
The president of the International Criminal Court said on Monday it won't give in to pressure from the US or Russia.
Recovery efforts are underway in Indonesia as the death toll from flooding and landslides rises to 469 people.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy met with his French counterpart Emmanuel Macron in Paris to discuss the US-authored peace deal, a deal that has been criticized for being too weighted towards Russian demands. Zelenskyy warned on Monday that Russia should not profit from the invasion of Ukraine, and Macron on his end underlined that no agreement will move forward without European participation.
Тому ми займаємо принципові позиції щодо санкцій, і щодо відповідальності за злочини війни, щодо юридичного статусу наших територій, які зараз займають російські окупаційні війська, і щодо російських активів, і щодо обов'язку реконструкції. Агресор повинен платити за агресію.
Pour le reste, il n'y a pas aujourd'hui à proprement parler un plan qui soit finalisé. Sur la question des territoires, il ne peut être finalisé que par le président Zelenskyy. Sur la question des actifs gelés, des garanties de sécurité, de l'accession à l'Union européenne, des sanctions européennes, il ne peut être finalisé qu'avec les Européens autour de la table.
Over the weekend, a Ukrainian delegation met with U.S. officials to discuss the peace deal. According to U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the meeting had been productive. The latest round of talks comes at a challenging time for Kyiv, as Russian forces continue to gain ground in eastern Ukraine, and Zelenskyy is facing strain following a domestic corruption scandal. In a response to Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever, EU High Representative Kaja Kallas said approving a reparations loan for Ukraine gives the European Union greater leverage at the negotiating table to end Russia's war. De Wever had previously warned that the proposal risked derailing the diplomatic process. Kallas, however, insisted that the approval of the reparations loan sends three messages. To Ukraine, she argued it would show them that the EU is there to help defend themselves. Secondly, it would send a message to Moscow that they can't outlast the EU. And finally, it would prove to the US that the EU is taking strong and credible steps. Under the scheme, the bloc would channel the frozen Russian assets to Ukraine. Kyiv would only be asked to repay the loan if Moscow agreed to compensate for the damages. However, Belgium's Prime Minister Bart de Wever has repeatedly opposed the proposal. He claims it could pose a risk to Belgium, where the assets are stored. He also said it could act as an obstacle to the White House trying to reach a deal between Ukraine and Russia.
In an interview with Euronews' new morning show Europe Today, General Ben Hodges, former commanding general of the US Army in Europe, speaking on the war in Ukraine and Europe's safety, warned that the continent is slowly waking to the realization that it cannot count on Washington as a fair partner.
I think Europe and Ukraine, including Ukraine, knows that the United States has a primary interest, which is business with Russia after this is all concluded.
In the general's view, the US administration's approach to the conflict was flawed from the start.
The administration's approach has always been doomed from the start because they didn't care about the origin, they didn't care about the history or the geography involved, and in fact approached it as a massive real estate deal. Secretary Rubio said in the beginning, Ukraine, you're going to have to give up some territory here before they even started.
This week, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio will skip a key NATO meeting, highlighting Europe's decreasing priority for the US after the Western Hemisphere, Indo-Pacific and likely the Middle East, according to Hodges. But the general remains confident that Europe has the capabilities to defeat Russia's war in Ukraine.
If you add together the industry, the wealth, the populations, the technologies, there's no reason that Europe, including Ukraine, cannot stop Russia. What they lack is the self-confidence and the political will.
According to Hodges, the narrative that Ukraine is losing the war doesn't add up, as Russia's economy is in deep trouble, and in 11 years, Russia has only been able to occupy 20% of Ukrainian territory. The president of the International Criminal Court said during the institution's annual meeting on Monday that it won't bow to pressure from either the US or Russia. 9 members of its staff, including 6 judges and the court's chief prosecutor, have been sanctioned by US President Donald Trump for pursuing investigations into US and Israeli officials, while Moscow has issued warrants for ICC staff in response to an arrest warrant for President Vladimir Putin over the war in Ukraine. The sanctions have taken their toll on the court's work, affecting a wide range of investigations at a time when it's already struggling with growing demands on its resources.
Greek farmers are escalating their protest against the government, demanding immediate payment of subsidies from OPEKIPI, the agency responsible for distributing EU agricultural subsidies, and protesting the increased production cost alongside low prices of their products. The blockade comes after several people were arrested last week in the spiraling farm fraud case that revealed millions of euros were paid in illegal subsidies by OPEKIPI, a scandal that has provoked farmers and brought extra scrutiny to subsidy payments in Greece. On Sunday, major incidents were reported in central Greece, specifically in the Thessaly region, where farmers managed to break through police blockades and block the critical Athens-Thessaloniki National Highway with tractors. According to an announcement by the Greek National Police, 2 police officers were also injured and 3 arrests were made. With no assurances or statement from the government, the protests are expected to spread across Greece until the 5th of December with more road blockades, a tactic frequently used by farmers to put pressure on the authorities.
Popular cryptocurrencies are continuing to struggle as Bitcoin opened the month of December with a 5% drop in value in European trading. The coin currently hovers around 73,500 euros in value, a sharp decline from its estimated value only 24 hours prior, which was just short of 78,000 euros. The digital currency had been in a prolonged and steep decline since reaching its record value of about 110,000 euros in October. The decline is likely attributed to a significant rise in liquidations and sell-offs as holders of the coin look to profit off of their investments. Ethereum, the second largest crypto by market cap, also experienced similar trajectories since its all-time high in November of this year. Other smaller yet well-known and highly traded coins, including Solana, are also continuing their downwards trend.
Authorities in Indonesia on Sunday reported the death toll from floods and landslides in the country has risen to 442 people, as emergency services continue their frantic efforts to access portions of the hardest hit Sumatra Island, where thousands of people were left without essential supplies. According to the National Disaster Management Agency, some 402 people were still missing after initial rescue efforts were hampered by a lack of heavy equipment. While evacuation efforts are underway, officials say that electricity and internet are now partially restored. The devastating floods and landslides came after monsoon rains over the past week caused rivers to burst their banks. The deluge tore through the mountain villages, swept away people, and submerged thousands of houses and buildings in the 3 provinces of North Sumatra, West Sumatra, and Aceh. The devastating floods also affected millions in Malaysia and Thailand, as well as in Sri Lanka, where a state of emergency was declared.
Conservative candidate Nasri Asfoura is edging slightly ahead of his rivals in Honduras' presidential election, according to early preliminary results. The National Election Council says Asfoura of the National Party was leading, securing around 530,000 votes, with 34% of votes counted. The race is turning out to be tightly contested, though, with Liberal candidate Salvador Nasrallah trailing marginally behind, also with just over 500,000. Rixi Moncada, who served as defense minister for the incumbent Liberty and Refoundation, however, appears to have significantly dropped behind.
Candidata Partido Libertad y Refundación Libre, 255.972 votos. Candidato Partido Innovación y Unidad Socialdemócrata, 10.698 votos. Candidato Partido Liberal de Honduras, 506.316 votos. Candidato Partido Nacional de Honduras, 530.073 votos.
Asfoura's success could be in part due to a surprise endorsement announced on Friday by U.S. President Donald Trump. Trump said Asfoura, who had expressed a hardline stance on narco-trafficking, would be the only candidate his administration was willing to work with. The U.S. president also threatened cuts in U.S. aid to Honduras in the event of his loss. The Election Council has up to 30 days to announce the final results. In addition to a new president, Hondurans were also casting their ballots for a new parliament and hundreds of local councillors.